What's up, y'all? It's your girl Jerica, and I am back with yet another ghetto Bible tale. And today we're gonna wrap up our story on Joseph. So get ready for this one. All right, y'all. As I said, this is the final part of the Joseph trilogy. If you have not watched part 1 and part 2, please refer to the description box for those links. Pause this video, go watch those, and then come back. Now, if you have watched part 1 and part 2, then you already know how this goes. Before we can get into our story, we must first discuss the rules of context. I have a video that better describes them, but right now we're just gonna run through them real fast, and then we're gonna get into our story. Rule number 1 is language. The Bible wasn't originally written in English. It was originally written in ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. Keep that in mind when you're reading it. Rule number 2 is history and culture. The history and culture of the Bible is of ancient Israel. Don't apply your modern day culture and rules to the Bible because it will not work. Rule number 3 is reading the Bible as a whole. Do not take bits and pieces of the Bible and try to use it to further some type of agenda. Read the Bible, take it for what it is as it is, from Genesis to Revelation, and all is one cohesive story. And the final rule of context is the Holy Spirit. You must talk to the Lord, your God. Ask him to bestow his Holy Spirit upon you so that you may gain understanding of the Bible. Once you gain an understanding of the rules of context, we can proceed on in our story. Alrighty. Part 3 of Joseph's story takes place in the book of Genesis, chapter 42 through chapter 46. Part 2 left off with Joseph being elevated to the second highest position in Egypt. He is the right-hand man of the Pharaoh, and he is pretty much the vice president of Egypt. And he has enacted this grand plan to store up food for 7 years. So the beginning of part 3, we are in the 7-year span of famine. Because remember, he said there was going to be 7 years of growth and goodness, and then there's going to be 7 years where the land would not grow anything. So that's where we're at. We are in the 7 years of famine, and Egypt is doing pretty good because they spent the first 7 years storing up their grains, storing up their food. So because of that, Egypt has become like this hub for other people. So a lot of people are traveling to Egypt to get food because they are the only region with food. And Joseph is overseeing all that. So basically, Egypt becomes this giant soup kitchen. Everybody and their mama traveling up to Egypt just to go get something to eat because food ain't growing nowhere else. Back home, in the land of Canaan, I believe is where Jacob and them is at. They are a family that are in need because they can't grow no food. So because of that, Jacob hears about food basically being on sale in Egypt for a cheap price, and he sends his boys to go up there to buy some food because they all about to go hungry in Canaan. He sends all the brothers, but he keeps Benjamin at home. For those of you that don't know, Benjamin is Joseph's younger brother. Him and Joseph have the same mom, which is Rachel, who was Jacob's favorite wife. Remember, I told y'all in part 1 that Joseph was Jacob's favorite child. But at the time that Joseph went missing, Benjamin wasn't born yet. So I think he wasn't born. Oh, I'm lying. Benjamin was born. He was born. Rachel actually died during childbirth with Benjamin. So as you can imagine, Joseph and Benjamin are Jacob's favorite children because they're by the woman that he loves. So being that, Jacob is under the impression that Joseph is dead, he doesn't let Benjamin out of his eyesight. So he sends the other brothers to go to Egypt to get the food, and he keeps Benjamin at home because he's scared that something's gonna happen to him. So, and mind you, at part 3, we are 20 years later. So when they sold Joseph into slavery, that was 20 years ago. So we are 20 years past. So Joseph was 17. He was 17 when he was sold into slavery. So 20 years has passed. He is now 37 years old. So very much a grown man. He is no longer a child. He's 37-year-old man, and he is the vice president of Egypt. Now, The other brothers, they head to Egypt and they attempt to buy grain and food so that they can go back home and feed the rest of the family. So Joseph is over it. He's there selling the stuff. He's overseeing everything. And with the family, they're being Hebrews, when they come to see the Egyptians, they come and they bow, they show their respect, because hey, we're trying to get something out these people, so we got to be nice. So Joseph is there and they see him and they don't recognize him. I mean, they shouldn't recognize him. He was a 17-year-old kid the last time they saw him. This is a grown man now, so they don't recognize him. And more than likely, Joseph is wearing Egyptian clothes, and Egyptians wore makeup, they wore wigs, and they wore those things on their head sometimes. I doubt they and because they painted their face. Egyptians painted their faces, so I doubt that they recognized him anyway, because that wasn't a part of the Hebrews' culture. It wasn't part of their culture, so I'm pretty sure they didn't recognize Joseph when they saw him. So when Joseph sees them, I guess he gets a little mad or he gets a little agitated, and he claims that they are spies, and then he throws all of them in prison for 3 days. That was a little low down, but I guess you kind of got to think about, what would you do if your family tried to basically have you killed, and then you see them 20 years later? How would you respond to that? Let me know in the comments, because I'm curious. So whenever he throw them in prison, he send an investigator to question them, and he asks them who they are and all that stuff. I guess he trying to verify who his brothers is, or he just messing with them. I guess just messing around with them. So they tell him that they the sons of a man in Canaan, and how they have a little brother at home, and how their other brother is dead. The other brother being Joseph. Joseph tells them that he don't believe them, and that he wants them to bring back the younger brother, which is Benjamin, in order to prove that they are innocent. So the brothers start talking in prison, saying that they believe that this is like karma, that they reaping what they sowed because of what they did to Joseph. Like, they're whispering amongst each other in prison, because like I said, he threw all of them in prison for 3 days. And they saying this in their language, but unbeknownst to them, Joseph can understand what they saying, because they under the impression that Joseph is Egyptian. So when he does talk to them, he speaks to them he doesn't speak to them in their language. He speaks to them in Egyptian, and then he has a translator there that's translating what he says, what each party says. So there's a translator translating what the brothers say, and there's a translator translating what Joseph says to them, because he's not speaking Hebrew. And so they start speaking Hebrew amongst each other, saying, man, this is our karma. We reaping what we sowed because of what we did to our brother. And he hears what they're saying, and he understands what they're saying, because he speaks that language. He is also Hebrew. But like I said, he dressed up like an Egyptian, so they can't tell. So anyway, he continued to use the translator because he didn't want the brothers to know who he was just yet. So when he heard how sorry they was, he kind of went off to the side and cried about it, because I guess that's something he done lived with for 20 years, that your brothers tried to kill you, and like, they didn't care about you enough. They didn't care about you, so they tried to kill you. And that's something that man had to live with for the past 20 years. So I guess to hear them say how they regret doing it and that they feel sorry, it got him emotional. So he kind of went off to the side and cried. And the crazy thing, like, he could hear all his brothers, they in that cell arguing. And can you imagine Reuben? Reuben was probably like, I told y'all not to kill him. Like, I told y'all to leave him alone. But anyway, so Joseph, he lets them go. However, he keeps one. He keeps Simeon. And he tells them the only way that Simeon can get out of jail is if they come back with Benjamin, with the little brother. And so he gave them their money, because they came with money to buy the food. He gave them their money back, and he gave them the food, and then they go back to Canaan. He gave them the money. He snuck and gave them the money back, actually, because they were supposed to pay for this food. And so he had his servant like put the money, hide the money amongst they things. They secretly took the money back and food. So when they on their way back home, they realize that they still got their money, and they're like, I don't understand why God being so good, because how we get our money back? But anyway, so they go back home to Canaan, and they tell Jacob, you know, we was in Egypt. This man locked us in prison for 3 days. And he kept Simeon, and he told us that in order for us to get Simeon out of jail, we got to bring Benjamin back with us. And now Jacob, again, making that mistake of showcasing his favoritism towards his children, which is so annoying to me, but whatever. Jacob, he says no, because they said we got to take Benjamin back. Jacob said no. He said, I done already lost one of my sons. I'm not going to lose another one. And honestly, that kind of makes me mad. And it kind of makes me sad for the other brothers. Because like, because Simeon is still in prison, y'all. So you don't care about Simeon at all. They're like, bro, this Egyptian man said that if we don't bring Benjamin back with us, we cannot get Simeon out of jail. So Simeon stays in prison. So Jacob essentially makes a choice between Benjamin and Simeon by saying, I'm not sending Benjamin with y'all because I'm scared something gonna happen to him. He gonna die. So you don't care about Simeon sitting in jail. And I think that's kind of messed up. But ain't no kind of. That's messed up. So an unknown amount of time passed by. So they didn't immediately go back to Egypt because, like I said, they are begging Jacob to let them take Benjamin. And he continually says, no, I'm not letting you take my son anywhere, as if Simeon ain't his son. So can y'all imagine how Simeon looking, sitting in prison? He already been in there. Remember, all of them got locked up for 3 days. So he already spent 3 days. And then, ain't no telling how long it took them to get from Egypt to Canaan. This boy still sitting in prison and ain't done nothing. So can y'all imagine being Simeon, just sitting in prison like,
they gonna come back any day now. Any day now. Any day. Today, tomorrow.
I don't know how Simeon didn't lose his mind in prison, because I would have lost mine. Some close to a year goes by. Simeon is still in prison in Egypt. They are still begging Jacob to let them take Benjamin to Egypt so they can get Simeon out of prison. So now they done ran out of food again. He's trying to send them back up there, and Judah's like, nah, we ain't going back to Egypt unless Benjamin coming with us. And so Jacob whines about it, but Judah ends up taking full responsibility for Benjamin. And he says, you know, if something happened to Benjamin, you can just blame me for it. Like, I'll take the fall. You can kill me or whatever you want to do, but I'm going to take care of Benjamin. I'm going to make sure that he okay. I think I told y'all in part 1 to keep Judah's name locked down in your brain, because we want to talk about character growth, but we'll get into Judah's character growth a little later. But Judah takes full responsibility for Benjamin, and he assures his dad that he ain't gonna let nothing happen to Benjamin and that he is going to take care of him. But they gotta go to Egypt, they gotta get some food, and they gotta get Simeon out of prison, who has been there for dang on near a year. So I want to draw a quick contrast between Judah and Reuben, in the sense of Judah stepped up and was like, I'm a do this and I'm gonna do that. Whereas, if y'all remember back in part 1, when Reuben wanted to save Joseph, instead of him outwardly saying, we ain't gonna do this, we just gonna take my brother home, blah, blah, blah. Instead of him doing that, he was trying to do something slick and behind his back, and you saw that ended up getting Joseph sold into slavery. If he had taken the approach that Judah took and been a man about it, because he was the oldest, he could have said, y'all, we ain't gonna do that because that's our brother. And they would have respected that because he was the oldest. But that's not the route he chose to take. He chose to be jellyback. So the contrast between Judah and Reuben is Judah is taking full responsibility for everything, he being a man. Just thought I might throw that out there. Anyway, and then, you know, I said I was going to talk about character growth later. But, I mean, it's fitting that Judah steps up for Benjamin, because he was the one who initially suggested that they ask Joseph, remember? That was Judah that said they should kill him, and then that was Judah that suggested they should sell him into slavery and make a couple dollars off of him. But now he's being a man and showing his character growth by stepping up to protect Benjamin. So anyway, Jacob finally, he lets him go to Egypt because he ain't got no choice at this point because they need food and he ain't finna take his old self up there to get it. So he tells them, all right, go ahead, go. Just take Benjamin and watch out for Benjamin. So almost a year passed and the brothers have finally returned to Egypt. They have Benjamin with them. And when Joseph sees them all coming back, he sees them with Benjamin, he orders for them to have dinner at his house. Mind you, he lives in the palace. So when he wants to have dinner with them, the brothers are scared because now they thinking, oh, we finna get killed. This man finna kill us. This Egyptian finna kill us. So when because remember I told you that he had sent the money back home with them. So they thinking, oh, he finna get us because he think we're thieves and that we didn't pay for our food and he finna kill us. So they immediately tell the house manager or the lead servant, they was like, listen, we was trying to pay for our grain, but somehow the money ended up back on our goats or our donkeys, and we just wanted to, let you know we wasn't trying to steal or whatever. We was gonna pay for this stuff. And so the servant tells them, it was a gift from your God, and then he brings Simeon to them, and they all, it's a family reunion. So they see Joseph, they give Joseph what their daddy gave them. I think he sent some money and fruits and stuff like that. So they gave that to Joseph. He accepted it, whatever. And then he asks them, Joseph asked them, about their family. So, they tell him about Joseph. They tell him about Jacob, and they tell him about all their family stuff that Joseph already knows. And when Joseph sees Benjamin, the Bible describes how he is like so overwhelmed with love and joy and relief, because I guess he figured since they hated me so much, him and Benjamin were Jacob's favorite. So that he was thinking, since they hated me so much, they definitely hated Benjamin and they probably killed him, which ended up being the exact opposite. They loved Benjamin, which is crazy to me. They hated Joseph, but they loved Benjamin. So, and the Bible describes like this overwhelming feeling of love from Joseph and how he really wanted to just like hug Benjamin and hold him in his arms, because him and Benjamin are actually, they're not half brothers like the other brothers with their half brothers. Benjamin and him have the same mom and same dad, so they're whole brothers, and they have a different type of bond, and he really wanted to hug his brother because it's been 20 years. But he pulls himself together and they have dinner at his house. So when they leave, Joseph frames the brothers for theft. Y'all, Joseph played so many cat and mouse games with his brothers. I like, it was so silly. It really was, but he just kept playing games with them. So he frames them for theft. So what he does is, while they're at dinner, he has his servants go put items from his house in their bags. Because, they have their donkeys and stuff saddled up, and, they got bags because they taking food with them back home. So he go have his servants put stuff from his house in their sacks while they're eating dinner. And he stashes some kind of like Holy Grail type cup in Benjamin's bag. Specifically, he picked Benjamin's bag. And so the brothers are getting ready to leave. They're getting ready to go back home. They have Simeon, they have Benjamin, everybody finna go home. And as soon as they get ready to leave, Joseph's people stop them and accuses them of theft. And they're like, nah, we ain't got nothing. We didn't take nothing. What you talking about? They claim innocence. And then one of the boys, I believe it was Judah, he says, if you find your stuff amongst our stuff, whichever one of us has it has to be your slave. And Joseph was like, bet. So of course he done stashed this Holy Grail cup in Benjamin's bag. So the servants immediately go straight to Benjamin's bag and they pull out the cup, and the brothers was like, damn. Cause that's the dad's favorite child, and he had already told them that he didn't want them to take him down now because he was scared something was gonna happen to him. And now boom, Benjamin about to be a slave. So again, Judah jumps up and he's like, oh, no. You take me instead. Take me instead. I'll be your slave. Which again, it's growth for Judah, because Judah was the one who said that they should kill Joseph. Meanwhile, he going out of his way to protect Benjamin. That right there is growth. And that is growth because he saw how hurt his daddy was when they told him that Joseph was dead. He knew that if they went back home without Benjamin, Jacob was already old. They know if they went back home without Benjamin, Jacob was gonna croak. So Judah was like, I'll stay here in this place. I'll be the slave. I will be your servant. You will be my master, and let my brother go. Which is crazy. That's crazy growth, because as you can see, who didn't step up? Reuben didn't step up, and he the oldest brother, the oldest of all of them. He didn't step up, but Judah is the one that's stepping up. Judah. Lock the name down. So after all this and seeing how Judah was taken up for Benjamin, it's like Joseph becomes so overwhelmed with emotion that he finally reveals himself, and he tells them, I'm your brother Joseph. And all the brothers look at him like, what? Nah. And they don't believe him. They're like, oh, you bull crapping us right now. Ain't no way you are brother. He is dead. And he says, nah, I ain't dead. He pretty much gives them the whole story. He tells them about how they done throwed it, how they all hated him, how they threw him in the pit, how they sold him into slavery for 20 shekels, how he went through this house, he went through this, he was in jail, he did this, that, and the third. He tell them the whole story, and they left looking like, dang, my bad, bro. He explains to them that their actions got him where God wanted him to be. And so he ain't even mad no more. And they all, I guess they kind of relieved, because they thought because they thought Benjamin was gonna be a slave, and they were gonna have to go home and explain that to their dad, and it was gonna be some problems. So anyway, he tells them to go home, and he tells them to bring their daddy back, because he wants to see Jacob. And like I said, it's been 20 years. And so the boys go back home, and they tell Jacob about Joseph, and Jacob really can't believe it, because he has believed that his favorite child has been dead for 20 years. He don't believe this. So God speaks to Jacob, and God tells Jacob that he needs to go to Egypt. So after a few days of them trying to convince him, and nothing happened until God spoke to Jacob and told him, hey, go on to Egypt. And God made that, he reiterated his promise to Jacob, which was, I will make a great nation out of you. And the only way I'm gonna be doing that is if you go to Egypt. And so Jacob goes to Egypt, and boom, years later, we have 2 million little Hebrews, and boom, we have the nation of Israel. And that is the history of Israel. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Joseph. But you ain't gonna take my word for it. It is all across the book of Genesis. But what I wanted to highlight was a lot of things. First, Jacob, and how he constantly screws up. So at this point, I was just talking to the camera, and the camera had stopped recording. I guess it overheated. So yeah, we're about to improvise right now. So what I was saying was, I'm gonna start from the top of the family and go down of people and how they acted and how they caused this chain reaction of negativity. And the person at the top of this is definitely Jacob. I've done this before in a ghetto Bible tale that another ghetto Bible tale that features this family. It was the one about Jacob's daughter Dinah. I will leave a link to that video in the description box. But anyway, at the top of this family, the patriarch of this family is Jacob, and I feel like he started the negativity by openly and outwardly favoring Joseph over his other children, by treating him better than he treated his other children, by putting him on a pedestal. This, and he did not do that for his other kids by openly showing that he really didn't give a care about them. And he has done that all through the book of Genesis. Like, if you go read Genesis, you will see how Jacob don't care about these kids. Not like that. Like, the only ones he really cared about for real were Rachel's children, which were Joseph and Benjamin. That's number one. The number one of this domino falling is Jacob putting Joseph on a pedestal and favoring him over the other children, openly creating animosity between his children and overall hate, fostering their hate for their younger brother. Number two, I definitely am going to hold Joseph accountable because Joseph was a little snobby. I don't care what nobody says, but I just feel like he was a little snobby initially, and there's no way he didn't know how much his brothers hated him. Like, you knew, and look, he kind of liked it from what I can see. Like, I don't think he was naive to the fact, and he acted a little snobby. He further fostered their hatred for him by acting the way he was acting. He wasn't all that humble initially. But one thing about it, though, he went through all that stuff, and God definitely taught him humility, because I don't think that he had it initially. So humility was a lesson that Joseph had to learn, and he went through all of this stuff, and guess what he learned? Humility. And he learned not to complain, and he became a very humble man. But I do feel like in the beginning, he was a bit snobby. You can agree to disagree or whatever, but I do feel like he was, and he got humbled. But God still elevated him. But he was a little snobby. All right, y'all. So now, I really wanted to focus on Reuben and Judah. First off, Reuben was the older brother of all of them. He's the first child of Jacob. He's the oldest of all 13 kids. I feel like Reuben was a man enough to tell his brothers to leave Joseph alone, because he felt like they shouldn't have killed Joseph. He didn't want to be a part of that plan. It was his idea to throw him in the pit, and he was gonna come back and get him later. I feel like he should have been upfront, and he should have said, "Nah, y'all ain't finna do nothing, and we finna take him home," because that's what a man is supposed to do. But he did not. And as we continue to read this story, you don't even see Reuben step up again. He didn't even step up for Benjamin. Which leads us to our next person, Judah. Now, Judah at the very beginning seemed like he hated Joseph the most, if you noticed. And it was Judah's idea to kill Joseph initially. And then, Reuben talked him down and was like, yeah, we could just throw him in a pit and, just let him die like that. Because Judah was ready to put hands on him, like slay him. And Reuben was like, nah. So Judah was like, cool, we'll just throw him in a pit then, and he could just die of starvation in there. And then Judah was like, nah, we're going to sell him into slavery. And so Judah sold him for 20 shekels. Right? And so 20 years later, we see growth in Judah and how he is defending Benjamin, like how he's about to take the fall and become a slave, because he saw how hurt his father was over Joseph. He did not want to put that hurt on his father again, so he decided that he was going to take the fall for it. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you're not a Bible geek like me, Judah is actually the ancestor of Jesus. So Jesus was born through Judah's bloodline. In the moment that Judah decides to be a sacrifice for Benjamin, it is a picture of Christ and how Christ is a sacrifice for us. Benjamin was willing to lay down his freedom Judah was willing to lay down his freedom, lay down his life to protect his brother. That is a picture of Christ. And mind you, Christ was born through Judah's bloodline. So Judah is an ancestor of Christ. When most people read the story of Joseph, like they highlight Joseph, and Joseph is a good guy, and I was one of those people as well. But when I came across this story again, this time, Judah was a highlight for me.
seeing his growth from the beginning of this story up to the end. It was beautiful to me to see it, and I feel like it's something that should be highlighted, because he's one of the biblical people that people don't really talk about Judah that much. Most people, like I said, when they think about this story, they think about Joseph. But I want everybody to take a look at Judah and how much he changed. Like, he became a very considerate and loving and compassionate person over the 20-year span of this story. And once again, like I said, he is a picture of Christ. And I thought that it was one of the most beautiful things I ever seen. When I read it this time, I cried. That's how beautiful it was to me. And people like to say that they don't see Christ in the Old Testament, but like, that was Christ right there. Judah was a picture of Christ. And I just really wanted to highlight that and point that out for y'all.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you go watch part 1 and part 2 if you haven't already. If you want to request a video, you can do so at ghettobibletales.com, or you can leave a comment on this video or any of my social media pages at Ghetto Bible Tales. This has been your girl Jerica, and until next time,